Good morning. My name is Steve LaPraim, and I'm a candidate for Senate District 42, running as a Republican. First off, I'm a conservative first and then a Republican. And joining me is James Marshal, who is running for House District 84. So, James, do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm James Marshal, a Republican candidate for House District 84. I myself, like you, Steve, I'm with the Republican Party as long as the Republican Party's views align with the wisdom of Scripture and the God that I have faith in.
Amen to that. So what we're doing today is what we call a page turn on the Save America Act. And what has really kind of brought this together is there's been a lot of chatter on social media, the news, basically all media outlets on what this means for the United States. And so James and I are both from the contracting world. We've both worked with government contracts, both state and federal, and larger jobs, smaller jobs. But in our world, the practice is if you have an issue with a quote or a specification or a spec, we sit down and we go over prints, plans, numbers, and we do what we call a page turn. And at least that's what our industry calls it. So we go through the pages and we talk about what the concerns are. And so it's a really good practice in our business. I don't know how many other industries actually do that, but it's very common in our industry. So we decided, with all of the noise that's going on out there in the world about the Save America Act, that we would do this. A few things that are just plain observations. It seems as if this has become less about illegal immigration and illegal immigrants voting in our system, and now it seems to have morphed into women's rights, trans rights,
and just people's political ideologies.
Yeah. So, have you read the act?
I have read the act. I honestly didn't see anything in there that aligned with all of the hoopla I'm hearing on social media.
Me neither. So I read it once. I made the mistake of posting on social media, and this is what I said. I read the SAVE Act this morning. Honestly, the whole Real ID issue is a non-issue if you have the required documents to prove citizenship. For example, a real birth certificate, an ID, you were good to go. This is only when you go to register to vote, based off what I read. This isn't like you have to carry this with you all the time. It's just when you go to register to vote. It's not super clear on existing voters. I did mention that. And I probably missed that part because I read it and I didn't spend hours on it. But honestly, not a super big deal. There are many documents accepted that are equivalent to the Real ID that can be used for this, was basically my comment. So we can jump in. We both have it digitally on our screens. We both have a printed version here. Just to go through, there is, what do we say, approximately 36 pages, I think, of this?
There's 32.
32, okay.
I believe it's 32.
It seems to be that the SAVE Act is, it actually tells you, showing the text of H.R. 7296 as introduced with modification. So this is a modification of something that we have already had on the books. But just to specifically, what's the word I'm looking for?
I think just to define,
yes,
the difference between a legal citizen and an illegal citizen.
Sure.
Someone who just happens to be on our soil,
yeah,
but they are not a member of our country. They're not a member of our society.
Yeah, and one of the big talking points out there on opposing views, or just in general, is that there's not a lot of proof that illegal immigrants have voted in our system. And my only rebuttal to that is, how do you know? If they're presenting you with a fraudulent driver's license at the time of registering to vote, if that's required, there's actually a lot of states that don't require that at all, or that you don't even have to register to vote. How do you know? So let's just say they did. They presented a driver's license, a social security card, whatever the case was, some kind of form of ID at the time of registering to vote, and you didn't check to see if it was a fake or not. You're a clerk, you're on the other side of the desk, you're registering somebody to vote, or maybe they're doing it by mail. How's that person vetting that information on whether that's actually a fake ID or not? So we really don't know. It's really tough to find the optics on that unless you can really. So to say that would be basically that we know all that, or that you trust that their ID is real, their actual driver's license. I don't know about you, but it's been pretty common practice for many, many years in the U.S. and probably other places that if you are not 21 and you want to get into a bar, you can get a fake ID. Is that still a common practice?
I never really had any experience with the fake ID thing.
Yeah.
I saw people trying to pass off IDs that, belonged to somebody else and really weren't theirs.
Right.
And they got nabbed at the door.
Absolutely.
I mean, there was enough phony about it. But I think the big thing is there are other agencies within our government, though, that are their job is pursuing fraud.
Sure.
And pursuing false documents. I don't think that should be put on the shoulders of the election judges or the people at the elections offices. If the person produces the required ID at that moment, you can't hold them responsible for whether that's legit or not. But we do have, but that also kind of falls back into some of this other stuff though too, because in our communities, everybody gets in an uproar over ICE agents, showing up to pursue, who is a citizen and who's not.
Sure.
And, those agencies are doing that. Those agencies are, pursuing whether somebody has legitimate paperwork for being here.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight's always 20/20, right? Isn't that what we say? I mean, that's pretty common. So you may not know that there's that going on until after you've investigated it. And how do we know that everybody knows everything? And I think that's part of why this SAVE Act is being put in, right? It's so let's just do this. Again, I have it up here digitally, and I'm going to go over some of the concerns. We're going to call it concerns. So one person replied to me and said, "Your wife won't be able to vote unless she has a passport because of her birth certificate has a different name than her other ID. Hope this helps explain it to you." So let's go to this. It seems to be there's a lot of worry about the Real ID. Now, the Real ID, I got to be honest with you, is not had a very good introduction into the United States. A lot of states have said, hey, or the feds or whoever, hey, you have to have a Real ID, and if you don't have a Real ID by this date, then you're out of luck. You can't fly. You can't do this. You can't do that. I mean, it's not been a very good rollout. I will say that. I mean, I think it's been poorly done, and so. I'm not a huge fan of the Real ID movement, just because of how poorly it was executed. And then, you're worried about all this stuff with the Real ID, and then if you don't get this done with the DMV, and if the DMV takes, in some cases, weeks and weeks and weeks to get to you. But you have this date, this hard date you have to do this by, and then all of a sudden there's a press release that says, oh, by the way,
we're moving the goalpost.
Yeah, I take it back. Takesies, backsies. And then so they're like, okay, good. I don't have to worry about it. I'll just renew my normal driver's license. I don't have to. That's easy. We can autopilot that. I can do that online now, by the way, as long as I don't want a new picture that shows that I'm much older. I can just renew online. They ship it to me in a couple weeks. That's really nice. The Real ID, we have to bring up some of these documents to the DMV. To get it. So birth certificate, social security card, things of that nature. So if my wife, obviously her birth certificate doesn't show her last name as being my last name, and to be honest, I've never even looked at it, but if she can prove that she's a citizen of the United States and she's got her marriage certificate there, or her driver's license that shows her last name, her married last name, and also that she is the person on the birth certificate, isn't that enough? So let's just read it.
Quick moment here.
Yeah.
I can remember back when my wife and I got married,
Sure.
and the next day, I mean, we're on our honeymoon, and she was so excited to be changing her last name that she was already coordinating everything she needed to do to have her last name changed. And by the time our honeymoon was over and we got back to the house, she already had everything showing up in the mail with her last name changed.
Yeah.
It was just that easy.
Yeah.
So hearing everybody complain, about how hard it is, change your last name and this and that. I can't attest to that. I mean, my own personal experience. I mean, I watched my wife. She was super excited.
Yeah.
She wanted to have that last name, plastered all across everything like immediately. And she did. By the time our honeymoon was over, things were already showing up in the mail with her last name changed.
Yeah. I mean, so here's the deal. Is it easier today than it was 20 years ago? Absolutely. I had my Social Security number stolen by somebody that was not from this country almost 20 years ago. And that was a 3-month-long process just to get they froze my Social Security number. They did all the things, and then I had to go to the Social Security Administration and go through some hoops and some steps, make some appointments to physically be there because it was a fraudulent situation. They actually didn't reissue me a new number. They were able to, regain whatever was lost from or stolen from my identity, and then I did end up getting a new card because, my old one was like really tattered. I'd been carrying it around in my wallet, especially since that's how it was in the old days, forever and ever. So they're like, you need a new one of these. Your other one's almost not legible. But my point is, today, I could just get that now. I don't necessarily have to go make an appointment as long as I can prove who I am. So,
and that's another good point right there, is that when it comes to the Social Security office, under almost no circumstance will they change that number.
No,
that number stays with you.
Yeah,
you can petition them to have the name changed on it.
Yes,
as long as you provide the documentation that you've legally changed your name or something like that. But they will not change that number. And to me, that's kind of a testament to the validity of those documents. Now, I know there's some issues that under the Biden administration, they've been handing out Social Security cards to non-citizens. I'd heard something like that. But again, this is exactly what we're talking about. I don't know. I never looked it up. I heard it.
Sure.
But I'm not running around, rallying and telling everybody that the Biden administration's giving out free Social Security cards.
I mean, let's go back to the Obama phone thing. I didn't even live in a world where a free phone existed that President Obama was handing out. I don't even know what that is. So I could not say, oh, well, he's just giving out free phones to everybody. I didn't know how true that was. But it was certainly publicized. But that doesn't mean it's true.
Right, but as a responsible member of society, though, were you just taking hearsay like that and then running with it?
No.
Or were you, just kind of holding it for yourself and then,
I mean, I guess here's where I'm at. If I wanted to get an Obama phone,
mm-hmm.
and I didn't have my own phone,
mm-hmm.
then I knew that the program was available to get me a phone, and I wanted to use the program, I probably would have searched it and found out the facts before I made an assumption.
There you have it.
Yes. So, so we're going to start expelling some of these concerns. So if we go to page 1, line 14, which, by the way, if anybody wants to download the SAVE Act, you can go to, let me just pull that link up real quick, or give you an idea where you could go. Just because I think it's worth looking into yourself. If you've never read it, I think it's important that you read it. So if you want to go get to the Save America Act, believe it or not, I struggled with just Googling it and finding it. But the link I've been using is https://docs, docs.house.gov /bill this week /202 60209 / RCP S183 underscore XML.pdf. Now, if you that's hard to find, and if that link doesn't work for you, and that's a lot to type, you can just go to docs.house.gov, search for the Save America Act, and you should be able to find it. But again, I'll repeat, it was actually harder to just Google it and find it without a bunch of editorial stuff attached to it. So let's go over, again, on the first page, line 14, I'll just read it. Citizenship. So, as used in this act, the term documentary or proof of United States citizenship means, with respect to an applicant for voter registration, any of the following. This is interesting. Line 18. 1. A form of identification issued consistent with the requirements of the Real ID Act of 2005. So it's not saying you have to have the Real ID. It's a form of identification issued consistent with the requirement of the Real ID. So,
which is an act from 2005.
2005.
That's 21 years ago.
Yes.
Okay, so nothing's being dropped on anybody here.
No.
Like this shouldn't be catching anybody out of left field.
No.
Okay.
No. So that's a long time ago, and that's a great point. That indicates the applicant is a citizen of the United States. So what it's asking for is documentation or the equivalent to a Real ID, or the documentation you use for a Real ID to show that you're a citizen of the United States. So it goes on further. A valid United States passport. So there's two types of passports out there. One's the actual book, and then the other one's the passport card, which is kind of looks like a driver's license. I know that you can't get into certain countries with just that card, but you can use it to fly. So the applicant's official United States military identification card. So if you've got a CAC card or you've got a military ID, you're good to go. Together with the United States military record of service showing the applicant's place of birth was in the United States. So that's both those items. Do you read that any other way?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward to me.
A valid government-issued photo identification card issued by a federal, state, or tribal government showing the applicant's place of birth was in the United States. So just as a sidebar here, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, there are forms of IDs that we can get even from the state, some states, even a Real ID already, that may show where you were born as far as the country you were born in. Don't know how that is across the United States, but I've heard that this is true. Now, I've never seen it with my own eyes, but I've heard that's true. 5, a valid government-issued photo identification card issued by, I already said that one, but state or tribal government, described in paragraphs 1 through 4, but only if presented together with one or more of the following. So what that's saying is if it doesn't show the country that you were born in, a certified birth certificate with that ID, a unit of local government in a state or tribal government which was issued by the state, unit of the local government or tribal government in which the applicant was born, was filed in the office responsible for keeping vital records in the state. So we can go on and on here. So if you have a birth certificate and an ID that matches, that sounds like to me that's good enough. Now, if you've been married and you've changed your last name, I haven't found it in the document necessarily. It might be down here. I think I read something about it, but I guess the point is, because I'm not a woman and I've never had to face a name change that way, you would show your birth certificate, your marriage license that your name is changed, and your ID with your new name on there, and that should suffice at registration of voting. as you're a United States citizen.
Well, and I think the one thing to separate here, too, is that we're also not discussing if you were born outside of this country.
No.
Because the things I'm seeing on social media and where everybody's in an uproar is that the SAVE Act is hindering people who were born in the United States from being able to same-day vote.
Yeah, and possibly you just have to register to vote. Now, we'll search this document some more, but there is a lot of language in here that basically says each state is responsible for this information. So let's just take Montana, for instance. If Montana decides to create an environment to where this is how you register the vote, and they're using also whatever mechanism to say, yes, this is a United States citizen that's voting, then they send that to the feds and they say, yeah, this person is a citizen. We vouch for him. And that's it. The feds don't get involved. Now, we're not seeing that as voters. Here's another interesting thing, and I'm just going to bring this up quickly. This is not for state elections.
Right.
So if you go to get your driver's license today, like my kids have, and I've got 5 kids, and they're 27 on down to 21, and so it wasn't that long ago that they got their driver's license, some of them, and then we had to go to the DMV to get their driver's license. They had to bring their birth certificate and their ID, whatever ID it was, and maybe their social security card, and they would get their driver's license. They had to prove they were born in the United States or that they were legally who they were.
Well, it's hard for me to, unfortunately, get in a big hoopla over this because I have a birth certificate. I've served in the United States military, so I've got a DD-214, and all the documents that I needed to even join the military to begin with. And then from there, I don't know about you, but I had a driver's license issued the day of my birthday when I turned 15. So
yeah,
I've been documented up one side and down the other, for 40 years now.
Yeah. So, let's go down to would be line 16 on page, I guess it's 4. Requiring applicants to present documentary proof of United States citizenship under any method of voter registration in a state. The state shall not accept and process an application to register to vote in the election or federal office unless the applicant presents document proof of the United States citizenship with the application. So, again, it's up to the state. It's not like there's a giant switch out there that somebody can flip that says, hey, we're pulling the switch, and if you've already gone through this, it's too bad you got to do it again. So, and I'll tell you where that's born from. So, one person asked me if I was a married woman, a trans person, or had a formal name change in my life, if I was any of those things if I was not any of those things, then I could not have an opinion on this.
Now, was it your grandfather that had a name change?
Oh, yeah. Actually, both, on both sides.
Yeah. So
great-grandfather on one side and grandfather on the other.
So I think that's a great example.
Sure.
That your own family tree actually had a significant name change, and yet all of you still have birth certificates, you still have documentation, and you're all still allowed to vote.
Yeah, my grandfather, his last name was Spychalski. His family's from Poland, and they shortened it to Spears in the early days because it was too hard for people to spell and pronounce Spychalski. So, so I guess we've been doing this a long time in the United States. This has now become a hot topic item. So I dismissed that comment about whether I was a woman or a trans or whatever. So line 16 of page 4, requiring applicants to present documentary proof of United States citizenship under any method of voter registration in a state that shall not accept and process an application to register to vote in the election of federal office, again, federal voting, unless the applicant presents document proof of the United States citizenship with this application. So, and then it says, line 23, registration with application for motor vehicle driver's license, section 5 of the National Voter Registration Act of 1993 is amended. So they've amended, again, something from 1993, specifically to show your citizenship. In subsection, by striking each state motor vehicle's driver's license application and inserting subject to requirements under section H, each state motor vehicle driver's license application. There's a lot of striking there. Each state shall include, and inserting subject to the requirements under the section 8, each state shall include the following. They're adding a bunch of different things in the verbiage. But ultimately, line 21 in subsection C2, capital C-I, by striking including citizenship and inserting including the requirement that the applicant provides documentary proof of United States citizenship. So what they're doing is they don't even want you to get a driver's license without proving you're a United States citizen. So if the state decides to print the fact that you're a U.S. citizen on your new driver's license, there's your proof, because the state's taking the liability. So here's a comment. One gal had mentioned she had been divorced and that her husband had been adopted, and they went to get their real IDs. He got his, and she was declined because she had to track down all her paperwork from her previous life, essentially. We'll just call it that. Won't get into details. Okay. But in this act, which we've already read on page 1 and 2, it's real ID or equivalent documents. So if you have your real ID and your real ID shows your citizenship, problem solved. If you have your driver's license and the state decides to add your citizenship to the driver's license, problem solved. Is that how you read it?
That's how I see it.
Yeah. So, okay. So really, if the states were doing their job and they were listening to these concerns of their citizens, they would fix that within their system. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Okay. So that's my take. So, and she also mentioned something here. I don't have the whole comments, but somebody had mentioned to me that there was a 90-day window to where that could be, that information could be expunged. I had one gal say, Steve, you missed the fact that they're going to purge the rolls every 90 days. Here it is, meaning that they could purge the rolls the day before election, and because the SOS around the nation handed over their data to the feds, they can target who they want voting and who they don't want voting in an election. So that's a rumor. So I'm just going to look up this 90 days. I'm literally using PDF search. First, I'll just search for the number 90. No matches found. I also read the document. In fact, I told this young lady that I might have missed that when I read it the first time. I'll reread the document because I didn't see anything about 90 days. So there seems to be a rumor out there that if you go through all of this hoopla, that all that can be expunged after 90 days at any point. Now, I didn't really look at what the SOS submitted to the feds as far as voter information. Did you?
I did not. But one thing I would like to add to this, though, is that I moved to Helena in 2016.
Okay.
And when I moved to Helena, shortly after I did, I, of course, already had a Montana state driver's license. Okay.
Sure.
But then, I still ended up with a utility bill, and I had an address. And I went and got myself my voter registration card.
Yeah.
And I still have it.
Sure. The difference between now and then, though, is that you would have to prove your citizenship. That's the only difference.
Okay.
If
Well,
you're to re-register to vote, you have to prove your citizenship.
Okay. So basically, I would just have to produce the same documents I produced the first time.
As long as they show that you're a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to overthink this, but
I'm not either. This is difficult for me because I want to analyze it to a point to where, I'm trying to figure it out.
so I don't know if like some of the argument is that, and I'm just speculating here, like with the trans community, because I know that a lot of them do change their name,
Sure.
but I don't know if they're legally changing their name or if they're just creating an alias, and that's what that's what their concern is.
Yeah, I think the concern is that because, and again, I'm not a trans person, so I can't relate. But this was written for making sure that you're a United States citizen before you can vote. That's what this was written for, and this has become a much bigger problem, or seemingly a bigger problem. That you have to, so if you're a woman and you've changed your name, you're not going to be able to register to vote, or it's going to be harder, okay? Or if you're a person that has changed your gender, so to speak, and you've now changed your name, whether legally or not, I don't know, or you prefer to be called by a different name, but your birth certificate says, no, you're still this person, that it's just that you're not going to be able to get the stuff done by certain deadlines, and that you're not going to be able to vote. And then the other concern is because the SOSs, many across the United States, send all the voting information up to the feds, that they can now say, okay, we're going to compare the two reports on who voted, how they voted, and then these same people have proved that they are citizens or whatever, and then we can just say you can't vote. We can change it in 90 days. Well, the problem is the 90 days thing doesn't exist. It's not in here. It's not in here. The other thing that we're getting is that because, one of the other concerns that was brought up was that if you don't have this documentation and you don't have a real ID, or maybe you don't have your birth certificate anymore, or maybe you don't even have your driver's license anymore, which apparently that's a thing, or your ID or something, that because it costs you money to get that stuff again, they're calling it a poll tax, meaning that a lot of women who have changed their name now have to spend money out of their own pocket to change that information. So they're considering that as that cost to get the required information as a bigger a tax, basically. And so if you don't have the money, the $20, or I've even seen $200. I've seen a lot of figures put out on what it's going to cost for you to get this documentation. If you don't have the money, then you're just out of luck and you can't vote. I think the assumption is that everybody has that documentation, and if you don't have it, you should have it.
Well, I believe it was at the turn of the 20th century that they started issuing birth certificates. Is that not correct?
That's true. So if you've lost your birth certificate, though, like people do, they lose it. Sometimes they've had whatever, right? Act of God, a flood, you name it, or maybe they lost it wherever. Maybe a storage unit got locked up, they couldn't pay for. I mean, there's a lot of scenarios where you might lose your important documentation depending on how serious you're taking the important documentation. Then you need to get a duplicate or a certified copy. That costs money. And if you don't have it, then and you can't afford to get it, now what do? You can't register to vote.
So I guess it's requiring a little personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's what the uproar is over. At the end of the day, if you lost your documentation, then it's up to you to replace that. If it happens right before the election is coming up, at what point is that a you problem versus a me problem?
Yeah, and listen, I don't want to.
There just has to be some sort of accountability here.
There does, and I don't want to, not be sympathetic to somebody that's in a bad, dire situation. But I would think that if the states the federal government's going to require this, and the states are going to require it. Maybe there's an option where they say, hey, you don't have this, we'll help you find it. Now if you want your birth certificate, literally you can file online for it. They will send you. I did it with Oregon. I had to find my birth certificate. I didn't have a copy of it. My mother had it actually, and it was a specific. It had to be a certified original copy of my birth certificate. So I had the birth. It's not the birth certificate, but certificate of live birth or whatever.
Certificate of live birth. Yep.
But I had to get, for my passport, I had to get the actual certified copy of my birth certificate. So I go online. I go to Oregon State Vital Records. They charged me $15, and I had it within days. It was like that. It might have been overnight. So okay, so $15. You don't have the $15. I don't know what to do about that. I don't know how to fix that for you if you don't have the $15, but it was very quick. I went to the DMV. I bought a vehicle from a person that had been deceased, right? And then when you have that title, you're supposed to produce the death certificate of the person that you have in case they weren't alive to sign it. Mm-hmm. But if you have their death certificate, you can now, you can show that that person is deceased, you've bought the vehicle, okay? Literally, I didn't have the death certificate. So I go there and I don't have the death certificate. Oh, well, just walk 50 feet the other way. And literally they produced it immediately. A certified copy of the death certificate for $15. Now, I'm not minimizing the financial impact if you don't have the money, but my point is there's ways to get around this. And in my opinion, there's ways to get around it. I don't know. Maybe your situation is so dire you can't get around it. But with how everything's now online and how everything's being scanned in digitally, and almost all the hard records are now in a scanned vault, so to speak, digital vault, and then the hard records are probably in some other place like a records management facility. A lot of those systems are now really intertwined to where they can just say, oh yeah, I see that there. There's their birth certificate. We'll just pull it in here as proof digitally. You may not even have to present it. They may know more than you do already. So my point is, are those hardships? They could be hardships, but are they?
Yeah, but the hardship you're describing, to me, has more validity than everything else I'm hearing on social media.
I agree.
Because everything I'm hearing on social media is, it's the argument that, what if a woman gets married or this or that.
Right.
The argument you're making there, to me, actually has more validity as far as, like, if it costs $15, if it costs $20 for you to get duplicates of those documents so that you can meet the requirements. I think from a, perspective of policy, that would be something that's, worth looking into, because that's the big thing right there. The only argument I really see here with the SAVE Act is that if there's a financial hurdle between you getting the documents that you need in order to provide, for that ID.
Sure. Whether it's a driver's license, whether it's a real ID, whether it's a passport, the only uproar I could really see is if in some way, shape, or form, through the SAVE Act, that this goalpost has been moved, is, if there's an expense to someone in order to meet those requirements. Yeah, I'm with you. Here's the deal. If you are that upset about it, call your congressman or your senator, right? And say, hey, look, this is a financial hardship. Can we build something in the act that says the first round, that the fees for these documents are waived so people can get all their stuff together, and then once they have it, it's good to go? Like, there is an option for that. You could ask your legislators, you could ask your congressmen, you can ask your senators to do something like that. Like, you can call them, leave a message. In fact, I've talked to a few of those folks in D.C., and one of the comments that I heard from one of those guys is, the hardest part about my job is that I've been elected by the people that voted me in, my constituents and all those things. He says, but I don't always know what they want. And so it's very positive for people to call if they have a concern, or leave a message or email or text. I mean, a lot of these elected officials are on all sorts of social media that says, hey, this is important to me. This is a barrier. Would you consider this? And let those guys actually bring that up in these things, because they got to pass the House, the Senate, and then back to the House.
You know, and I would be really curious to know what that percentage of people is in society.
Yeah, I don't even know. I
mean, is it 1%? Is it 1%? Is it 0.5%? Is it 1/4%? I mean, how many people in the state of Montana, honestly, would be affected by the SAVE Act? I mean, I would be curious to know. And when I say it, affected by it, what does that look like? Is it like we're talking the money? You've lost some documents, so you have to pay some fees to get those documents you need to meet those requirements again. Because to me that would be like one of the only legitimate things I'm really seeing about this.
Sure.
Would be fees, involved. I mean, for me, it's not a big deal. I've got my kindergarten diploma, so
yeah. Some of us have good records.
But that would be the big thing. It would be that fee and what that fee looks like. But what is the actual percentage of people that are impacted by that?
I don't know. I did have another sidebar conversation with a group of really nice folks, seriously nice, and we're jawing back and forth. We're answering questions. We're asking questions amongst each other. It was really good. We didn't agree on anything in all parts, but one comment was from a gal that lives either on a reservation or maybe in a reservation town, a town that borders a reservation. And there's an issue with some of those folks are elderly. They can't get to a place to even register to vote. So some of those places, like their precincts, are maybe 30 miles away. They live out in the middle of nowhere. And so, it's going to be very difficult for some of these elderly folks to get out of their home to go do this. So,
So aside from the possible fees, if that goalpost has been moved and someone who's elderly has lost some of this stuff in order to,
or just the logistics to get them there to get the information, but this says it's on the state anyways, right?
Right.
So the state, in my opinion, would need to facilitate that. Wouldn't you agree?
That sounds legit.
Yeah. So let's go over another. One gal said, again, so she says they're going to purge the voting rolls. So I'm just going to search for purge in the document. No matches found, according to Adobe. How about delete? What's another word for purge that we can use? Where's my thesaurus? Is that how you say it?
Thesaurus?
Thesaurus. I read it twice, and I couldn't find anything that mentioned that. Remove. So let's search remove.
Oh, I like expunge better.
Oh, okay. Remove. All right. Here's something. So this would be page 15 and line 17. It says each state shall submit individual in the official list of eligible voters for federal office in the state to the Department of the Homeland Security through the Systematic Alien Verification for Entitlements (SAVE) system for the purposes of identifying individuals who are not citizens of the United States and taking necessary steps to remove such individuals who are not citizens from the official list. After notice is given to such individuals, after notice is given to such individuals and such individuals are given the opportunity to provide documentary proof of the United States citizenship, but a state with a memorandum of agreement for such purposes with the Department of Homeland Security on the date of the enactment of this subsection may comply with this subparagraph by carrying out such purposes under the memorandum. Each state may utilize such other sources of data available to the state for the purposes of identifying those individuals who are not citizens of the United States and removing such individuals from the official list. So, again, it looks like it falls on, I'm hearing that this falls on the state. So there's remove. So let's see if we have remove anywhere else. Let's see if we can find it again. Okay, clarification of authority of states. That is page 19. Non-citizens from official list of eligible voters. In general, based off the National Voter Registration Act of 93, talks about striking out some things and adding. Talks again about documentary proof of verified information that the registrant is not a United States citizen. That's line 3 through 5 on page 20. So let's find it again. Remove. This would be page. Okay. So it brought me back to page 16, and it brought me back to page 19, and it brought me back to page 19 again. So there's three places where it talks about removing folks if they're not citizens of the United States. In other words, the two lists seem to have to gel with each other.
Well, I was actually sitting here looking on page 19. Line 4 where it talks about prohibiting fees, but that's just between the federal government and the state.
Yeah, so I'm going to look up the word expunge. No matches found. Okay. All right. So a lot of words about poll taxes, meaning extra fees associated with it, are just poll taxes. So the more money it costs to get your record straight, the less encouraged you're going to be to vote or register to vote. Somebody asked, is it because you're running for office and you're a man that you wouldn't understand normal thinking?
Okay.
So I'm running for office. That's true. And I'm a man. And I'm not running for office for me. I'm running for office for the health of our state and to make a good future for the next generations and the current generations. And so things like this is why I'm running for office. If I can help educate people on what is and what isn't, and people trust their legislators, and we can help people out with educating folks and doing the best we can to support them in their concerns, I think that's a pretty good reason, and that's why I'm doing it. Because if this was for myself, it's a lot of work. It's not convenient. It's fun to get to meet a lot of people. It's really cool to hear people's stories. I fielded a call yesterday from a guy that was telling me about what's going on in his life. He says, would you consider looking into these things if you make it? Because these are things that plague me and lots of different families. And I said, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked me, because it wasn't on my radar. It wasn't on my radar as something to even consider to look at the moment. But now that you've brought it up to me as a prospective voter and maybe somebody that I'm going to represent, I will absolutely look into it. I will try to educate myself on it. I will try to reread in case I miss it the first time, and do some forensic studying on it. I mean, isn't that why you're doing this?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a huge divide between just your average citizens in the state and the legislators. What I question is where did that divide come from? Did that divide come from legitimate, arguments or legitimate events that have happened between voters and legislators?
Yeah.
I mean, there's the property tax issue, and that's a big deal for everybody.
Huge issue.
That shows a huge divide between legislators and taxpayers.
Huge divide.
So they start to lose faith in their legislators. Rightfully so. I mean, I'm one of them. I've watched what's happened with property taxes.
Yeah.
I'm running for office to try to change a few things.
Yeah.
And as just an average citizen, I didn't realize the challenges that are out there. All these federal acts, state acts, that are already in place that are these gigantic hurdles in order to make change. And so the more I get into this, the more I see, how big these hurdles really are and what it's going to take to either remove them, rewrite them. But this is a fight I want.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is a fight I want. This is a fight for my neighbors, the people of this state, to try to change things. This SAVE Act, quite honestly, when you had asked me about this, it hasn't been on my radar. A lot of the things that have been on my radar in this campaign have been, school choice, have been various things having to do with agriculture, and of course the property tax issue.
Yeah.
So when you ask me about this, I'm like, yeah, sure. I'll read up on it. If nothing else, I'm always willing to learn. It hadn't been on my radar, mainly because my documents are in order, and I just, it's just, nobody's ever said anything to me. The one thing I do like about this, though, is seeing it from the monetary perspective. Like all the other complaints I've heard about it, I'm not seeing what the issue is as I read through this act.
No.
Aside from the fees that would be involved if you've lost your documentation or you need duplicates or copies.
Or the logistics piece, maybe.
Yeah, or the logistics piece.
Yeah.
Those I think are valid arguments to it. The rest of it, to me, kind of comes back to that divide between the people and legislators. And that divide, the source of it to me, ends up being this wave after wave of social contagions,
Yeah, explain a social contagion.
So a social contagion is a behavior, a belief, emotion, or idea that spreads through a population via social influence rather than independent reasoning.
Sure.
So, much like a biological virus, but transmitted through observation, imitation, and emotional resonance. So one of the things that everybody's jumping up and down about right now are paid protesters.
Sure.
Because I think a paid protester takes away legitimacy for real issues.
Yeah.
Well,
it's a little offensive to the guy that actually is really passionate and believes that to have a paid protester just doing it because he's getting paid an hourly wage.
Right.
Isn't that a little crazy?
To me it is. And that is, I think, what I've noticed, even in the last several election cycles, it's like every cycle that goes by, we just get hit with more and more waves of protests and just social issues and things, tied back to political ideologies. And kind of like researching this, I don't really know what their validation is. I really don't know what their reasoning is. If I could find anything, that's concrete, then like you, being in construction, all we do is solve problems.
Yeah.
In construction, that's all we do.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, something a lot of people don't want to hear, especially when it comes to legislation. They want everything to be black and white, and I like black and white a lot more. But in construction, we also have kind of like one of those unwritten or, rules of
unspoken.
Well, unspoken, yeah, of the art of compromise.
Sure.
We have a goal we're trying to achieve, and whether there's something monetarily in our way, whether there's something physically in our way to stop us from what would be, the most perfect scenario, then we have to adapt.
Yeah.
In some fashion, because we still need to complete the task. We still need to, keep moving forward. And, we refer to that as the art of compromise. And there's always one decision that's better than the rest of them. But it's things like this where you sit down and we'll talk about it on a job site, and we'll kick the ideas around, and before you know it, the solution will present itself.
Yeah.
And then that's what we move forward with. And I have yet, after 30 some years of being in the building industry, have that fail me.
Yeah, it works.
Or fail my team or fail the project. And I think that's something we're starting to see now with some of these new candidates.
Yeah.
That I think that are stepping up to run, is they truly are interested in solving the problems, addressing issues. They do have empathy. They are compassionate, and they're not tied to political ideologies or some abstract bias. They really want what's best. So like when you come to these things like the SAVE Act, I think we need the SAVE Act. I think with the record number of people that have come across the border into the United States, I think the offices and the agencies that we have available to us that exist to protect citizens.
Yeah.
That this SAVE Act, is just a buffer for them to do their job, unfettered and, without getting attacked for it. Yes, I think, every time you bring another act or you bring more legislation forward, there's always some percentage that it just doesn't work out for, or there's some sort of a hurdle for them. And that's why, looking at this, to me, it's like, well, what does that percentage really look like? In the state of Montana, we have 1.1 million people. How many people is this going to stop from being able to vote? And I'm not just turning my back on them and saying, well, too bad, you can't meet the requirements, or you don't have the $20 to get your fees. My big thing is who are they?
Absolutely.
Who are they?
Yeah.
And let's get them the help. Let's, figure out how we can get them the resources so they can get the copies of these documents. It's not a matter of, there's a SAVE Act, figure it out.
Yeah.
If you want to vote, I want you to vote.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to vote for me. I mean,
No.
I just, but I want you to be able to participate in what makes this country great. But I don't want people who are not a part of this country engaging in that system.
Yeah.
They do not have a right to choose our legislators.
No.
They do not have a right to participate in any of that. They're not vetted. They're not a citizen. I might, my phone will probably start blowing up now, and I'll probably have a bunch of hate, coming my way. But, I grew up with the rules. I've had to follow the rules like a lot of people. I did my time in the military, and that really changed my perspective on our country a lot, with how great it is.
Yeah.
It is without a doubt, the flagship. It's not perfect. It's got a lot of problems. But these social contagions and that's not helping anything. It's not helping to find solutions. Jumping up and down and screaming and yelling is not the same kind of energy as trying to find a solution, or I think in a more constructive manner present your argument. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, everybody has an argument on everything. They have an opinion on everything. But you're going to get farther, trying to attract bees with honey than with vinegar.
Yeah, and here's where I'm at, and I think we can kind of wrap this up. And obviously, if there's more questions out there, I'd like people to ask. First off, though, if you have not read the Save America Act, you should read the Save America Act yourself. It's very difficult these days to find fact through Google and truth. It's a lot easier to find other opinions, editorials wrapped around the truth. So I encourage everybody who has concerns about the Save America Act to read it. I also encourage everybody, after reading the document, to reach out to your senators and your congresspeople and voice your concerns. They need to hear it. That's important. If they don't know what you're thinking, they can't help you. That's the truth. We don't have a crystal ball. Two, if we live in communities, and I'm charging everybody with this, by the way, this is something that I think that is important. We're not alone out there, and if you have people that that are struggling logistically, that need help, elderly folks, it doesn't matter, help them out. If voting's important to them and you have the ability to help them get to where they got to go to get some of this stuff, let's be a community and let's work with each other and help each other out. Because when there's a bunch of unknowns out there, the best thing you can do is educate yourself and then help everybody else with what you've learned and make sure it's factual. There's a lot of hoopla out there. There's a lot of things that you just brought up. And I think that the truth is tough to find sometimes, especially in today's day and age. And know that this piece of legislation was built to make sure that only United citizens were being were voting and being registered to vote. And it's become something much bigger. And but the truth is, if you read the document, you'll see clear as day. There's lots of alternatives to get this information to where it's got to go. There's a lot of things the states are going to have to do to do their part in the election system. And I know it's hard to trust elected officials, and I know it's hard to trust some folks in the government, or maybe you just don't trust in the entity. Well, make some phone calls, have a conversation, get in front of each other, and work with each other on it, figure it out. And I think that that'll help both sides very well. And where did this trough start? People just don't trust elected officials. And I have lots of opinions on what that could be, but we don't have enough time today. But I literally encourage everybody, please read it. Don't take what so-and-so said as fact. Read the Save America Act. Talk to your senators, talk to your congressmen, and have those conversations. Let your concerns be heard, but make sure that you know what the document says.
Well, yeah, and the last thing I'd like to put in there is that the Save America Act is nothing new. You can see it is built upon other acts that have also been in place going back to 1986?
Yeah, 86, 93, 2005.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is just an adaptation of something that already exists.
Yep, and so I just think that people need to realize that.
Yeah,
this is nothing new.
Yeah,
it's just a more of a refining of it.
Yeah, I think Solomon said once, "There's nothing new under the sun."
Yes, and he said it in Ecclesiastes.
Yeah, so read the Save Act. Research it. Don't take somebody else's word. Don't even take my word. Read it.
Absolutely.
Watch this and then read it. And then, if you have concerns, I can't do anything about it right now. But I care enough to put this together, and with this team of great people that said, yeah, Steve, come on in here. James, you agreed to come do this. I care enough to try to educate people. And I'm being honest in what I've done here. This is not nefarious. This is not. This is not a gotcha moment. That's not what this is about.
No, and it's not a party moment.
No.
Either. I think to read this and to go over this is not Republican. It's not Democrat. It's not Libertarian. This is.
It's just a document.
It's just and we're all just people. I mean, we are all citizens of this country. This is our country.
Yeah.
And these are our elections, and it doesn't have anything to do with party
or race or creed or
any
or
of
anything.
That. And that's one thing I see. As I read through that, that's all I see.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I appreciate you coming on today and sitting with me on this, and saying yes to just having this conversation, because I think it's important to have conversations like this, and I'd like to have more of them.
Yep, I think the more dialogue leaders can start to have openly, I think will help. I even think back, myself as a voter, it would just be nice if somebody was actually including me in the conversation.
Absolutely. And, if I don't make it through the primary, we have a primary on June 2nd, so folks remember that. If you like what we're doing here, vote for us. That would be fantastic. But if we don't make it through the primary, we're going fishing. I think that's what we're going to do. And then we're going to stay doing things like this, because I believe that still at the end of the day, I have something to offer to help people, and I'm going to continue to stay involved.
And that's something I've taken away from from the effort I put into my campaign so far too,
Yeah.
is that if I make it past the primary and I make it into the general,
Yeah.
then great.
Yeah.
If I don't, I'm not going away.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean I don't know what it would look like to keep running for office, but now that I've had an inside look to the system,
Yeah.
I want to participate.
Me too.
You
Absolutely.
know, I don't want to sit around my house and just complain.
Nope. I'm going to stay involved, and we'll get hopefully more studio time like this, unless our producer doesn't let us. So, and thank you, Red Quill Media, for this, by the way, and letting us be guests here.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you.